Hello, everybody. Good evening.
Buenas noches. How are all of you this fine evening? You're tuning into a Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp,
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
on 88.1 FM KPPPLP, Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. And boy, have we got a great show for you tonight. I have titled it in English as closely as I could to the phrase I wanted to use from the Spanish language, which is causando lástima. Lástima is pity. Causando lástima is causing people to have pity for you. And it's not meant to be a nice thing that you would say to someone. Like, causando lástima. Like if you hadn't bathed for a long time and you were, letting it all hang out for people to see, you hadn't changed your clothes, you don't care about yourself, and somebody said, oh, estás causando lástima, you're making people pity you. But kind of like that's not good. You don't want to be causando lástima.
I see.
You don't want to, it's shameful, especially when you don't have to. Especially when you could jump in the shower and, stop throwing your pity party, right? And pity party is the closest. It's not, I don't think, as derogatory as it is in Spanish.
Okay. Because
in Spanish, it's more like you're being a bum. Or you're doing something that is kind of a tantrum-y thing you don't really need to be doing. Like, there are choices for you, and you're doing this, wallowing in self thing instead. So that's why I chose the pity party. And this specific show refers to the propaganda in the media that is being put forth to you, the American audience, and in Mexico as well, in many cases, about what's happening with regard to, quote unquote, asylum seekers. These are people who are migrating, who want to come into the United States. Their ultimate goal, as stated by them for a long time, is to come into the United States. The avenue, or the loophole, I should say, through which they want to come into the United States is called asylum seeking, again in air quotes.
Oh, yeah.
Because we know the majority of them don't qualify and won't get asylum. So the real goal here is to get into the country and then, disappear or whatever. Find a way to stay, whether that's documented or undocumented. And, however you may feel about this issue, you have to remember that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, human smuggling. Trafficking of people and things and drugs is $1 billion a year industry with a B. It represents a portion of the income for organized crime in the United States, in Mexico, in Central America, and everywhere that human smuggling is taking place. And as you know, that is everywhere, including in Europe. Because now we have more and more and more transcontinental migrants showing up at the southern border, demanding to come in and demanding asylum. We're going to talk about the optics of this and what they're trying to instill in us about this tragedy happening at our southern border. But it's something that we have seen before, and it is once again going to be requiring that Americans find all of this empathy and pity for these people because of the unjust and inhumane ways that they are being treated, which is not to say that the detention facilities, whether in the United States or in Mexico, are up to snuff, if you will, in terms of their capacity, in terms of their resources, in terms of their personnel. But given the crisis that is created, that has been created through the smuggling of people in this caravan style form, how could they be? How should they be expected to have all the resources and the ability to process so many tens of thousands of people? So again, we're going to talk about the pity party and how it's being represented with regard to our southern border and Mexico's southern border, where there continue to be protests and continue to be confrontations between the mostly African and Haitian protesters comprising those new movements. I don't want to call them caravans anymore because I think they're going to be breaking them up into smaller groups. They're changing the way that they do. They're smuggling through Mexico and into the United States. They're using planes, trains, and automobiles now. They are.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they were using planes before, but not to the degree that they're using them now. I mean, people are flying in from other, they're coming in boats. They're like, it's crazy.
Wow, it is.
And again, it's a business. Somebody is making the money. A lot of the people involved are in organized crime or have ties to organized crime. By that, I'm talking about the big C word in Mexico. And I have shown you what some of those connections are to groups such as the executive director of Border Angels, Enrique Morones, the guy that planned and brought you the narco wedding.
Oh, yeah. That guy.
That shamed the Border Patrol in 2017. And how all of these people who call themselves human rights defenders are throwing the biggest pity party as part of this propaganda to get people in the United States to perk up, hand them their money, and support their current causes. And we're going to be talking about what those are, including the upcoming second trial of Scott Warren of No More Deaths. We're going to also talk about confrontations of Border Angels Hugo Castro with Border Patrol in the U.S., along with a Border Angels attorney named Dulce Garcia, which I and you both saw at the ABS conference.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
She was the one that sat in for Enrique Morones, who canceled. He was supposed to be sitting in that chair next to Nicole Ramos. So of Al Otro Lado fame. So we'll go through all of that on today's Super Chat show. Thanks for following us. And of course, if you want to continue the programming and the work of this non-profit, low-power, non-commercial radio station, you can make a donation, a tax-deductible donation, or support us through our Super Chat. Today, Duke, how can folks follow us and support our work?
Well, there's many ways. And also, just for information's sake, you can go to kpppfm.com, and that's where we have our all of our shows, all of our past. We started doing radio 3 years ago, so we have our podcasts up there. We started doing live streams a while back, and we're starting to incorporate those into our website. We take these videos and we embed them on our website. If you go along the website, you can find different links, different programs. You can go to the donate button, which will take you to a tax-deductible donation for our organization that sponsors the station, and it's tax-deductible. People have done that. We thank all of you who supported us through time. And also, there's an underwriting opportunity. Since we're a non-commercial, non-profit radio station, we do underwriting advertisement. It's different than regular advertisement, but it's underwriting, and basically you make a donation to the station and you get your business mentioned on the air. We have a new donor, a new subscriber, a new underwriter for our station. And it is PalomaForTrump.com. It's our new sponsor, Paloma, 4, Trump.com. Make my life great again, PalomaForTrump.com. So if you'd like to sponsor us, please go to kpppfm.com, go to the donate tab or the underwriting tab, and your business will be mentioned on the air through a tax-deductible contribution to our nonprofit organization. If you want to get a hold of us individually, you can give Cindy an email, cindy@kpppfm.com, or me, Duke, at kpppfm.com. You can also comment on every story. It's on our website, or you can go to our Facebook site. It is KPPP LP Fargo Moorhead, and you can go to our Twitter at media_PPP, and it's 88.1 FM Fargo Moorhead on Facebook. We also have the People's Press Project, the Mexi-Can. You can find Cindy's public page by going to @CindyGoSchempp. So there's lots of ways to get a hold of us. We appreciate it when you do. If we don't get back to you right away, we will in the very near future. And we've been working this stuff up. We have a lot to present. We're going to start with you tonight.
Yes. And I just wanted to tell folks that one of our followers and her husband, they had a pretty horrible
accident.
Collision. Yeah, head-on collision. Kathy Webb and her husband, Ken, Kathy Clark Webb, one of the followers of our show, she was severely injured and up until yesterday was still in ICU. So our prayers are with her and her husband. She sustained major injuries and has actually lost, I believe, her hand.
Wow.
So Kathy, Ken, we are praying for you. We will continue to send our love and support, and we hope that all our followers can do the same. They definitely need to be supported, and Kathy and her husband, both of whom were injured in this accident, need to know that they have the support of the community. Thank you very much for being with us on this show tonight, on this important and informative report about what's really going on. What this is a form of propaganda, but it looks like a pity party. It looks like there is something horrible going on and you need to stand up and do something about it immediately. Just like when they released the kids crying.
Oh, yeah.
Just like when we saw the pictures of kids in the cages in the media. This is the same type of reaction that what we are seeing now is supposed to elicit from you. And I'm going to start off by showing you one of the examples of this in Border Report in this article titled "Mexican Officials Tried to Round Up Children of Asylum Seekers at Tent Camp." The article talks about the standoff in Matamoros. As you may recall in my recent reports, I told you that Pueblos Sin Fronteras leader Irineo Mujica, who was actually physically in Tapachula, Chiapas, interviewing the African migrants and their families, doing videos and organizing with the African and Haitian migrants in these caravans that were getting stopped and kind of sent back and, disintegrated by the National Guard and the Institute of National Migration in Mexico, was making videos and obviously coordinating with what was happening in Matamoros, Mexico, which is right across the border from Brownsville, Texas. Okay? So we kind of have been following this activity, and now we're seeing the reports coming out of Matamoros and what they are saying about the encampment of people that are living in tents. Sound familiar? Just like they were in Tijuana. Now, what this article seeks to do is to make you believe that this is the only way they can live. They can't live inside of a shelter. This is what the United States and the President of the United States has done to the poor migrants seeking a better life and their children. He is forced them to live on the streets in this shanty made of tents.
I see.
It's not exactly true. As we learned from the Tijuana experience, there were shelters for them to go to. Some of them did have to stay in, because there were so many thousands, some of them did have to stay in tents. And even inside the building, many chose to stay in tents because it offered them a little more privacy. Obviously, they're filled to capacity in this, it was like a event center that could, and did take up to, I believe, several thousand people at a time. I think at its largest population, it was up somewhere in the 5,000, 6,000 people range. But remember, there was 7,000 people at the improvised shelter in the sports park Benito Juarez, where there was no roofs anywhere. So the government quickly came together and said, let's send them to shelters. They didn't have enough shelters or capacity at the existing shelters at the time to put everyone. So they rented this giant event center and put all of the people in there. It had running water. It had electricity. They had medics tents, the Marines feeding them. All of these things we learned. Many people refused. One of those people was Maria Mesa. She refused. And there were many others who refused to leave the streets, who stayed in the tents in the streets, even while there was raw sewage running through the streets, even while their children were being visited by doctors and being told that their children were sick and needed to go to the hospital and needed to be, put into emergency care because they were developing liquid in their lungs and needed to have hospitalization for the beginning stages of pneumonia. So what I see in this headline is, it sounds Gestapo-like. Mexican officials are trying to round up people's kids and take them from them. That's what's going on. There was a similar headline, I don't know if you recall, in Tijuana, where they were saying some of these parents have been threatened with having their children taken from them. You know why? Because they were putting the lives of their children at risk. And even after they were told, your children are sick, why don't you go to the shelter? Your children's health is being put at risk. Also, by the way, we found an outbreak of, was it mumps or measles, one of the two, maybe both of them, and chickenpox. It was chickenpox.
Yeah, that's what it was.
It was chickenpox. And you are keeping your children here where there is none of the above, none of the things that your children need. So Department of Human Services equivalent in Mexico jumps in and starts doing something for these children, and immediately they cry human rights abuse. And I just need to make this distinction because you need to hear how this is being played out. It says asylum seekers living in a tent encampment at the base of the Gateway International Bridge in Matamoros said the government tried to round up their children and force them. Okay, here it is. They tried to take their children. It doesn't say this, so I'm just going to go ahead and translate. They told them they were going to take their children unless they relocated to a shelter, unless they got their tukuses into a building with their kids. Oh my God. How horrible, those officials, forcing them to go indoors for their own well-being, for the well-being of the children. And they make it sound like they're sending them to, a crack house,
prisoner
some
camp,
unknown shelter. They don't. Well, you're not supposed. First of all, you're not supposed to be telling people what shelter a specific person was sent to. That's why they're called shelters.
I know, and just imagine a municipality that has thousands of people that show up one day, and there's nowhere to put them. You have some responsibility for other human beings that are in your community, so they're doing what they can do. It'd be like a natural disaster. You have to figure out how to house the people and keep them safe and keep them together and figure out what to do. And Mexico's been doing that out of being kind and human to people. And they get criticized like they're the big meetings that are separating people because these people just want to stay right here. We want to stay on this street. We want to take over this community park that you like to go on Saturdays and bring your family. No, we're going to live there and live in tents and throw our garbage around because there's no place to put it and there's not enough bathrooms. The municipalities have to do something because they have people in their community. So when they get lodge these complaints against them, like they are trying to come in and take people away and they're being really, really, unhumane to people, it's quite the propaganda.
And do not forget that certain numbers of those migrants in those groups that refused to go to the shelters were being used as human pity parties in the media.
Mm-hmm.
They were being used to go and protest in the streets to shut down border entries. Oh, by the way, do you recall me recently telling you when I was talking about how Mirineo and Pueblos Sin Fronteras from Tapachula is still helping and working and organizing with the people in Matamoros?
Mm-hmm.
That they shut down the border in Matamoros just like they did in Tijuana. You shut down commerce with a bunch of mercenary activists working in tandem with these migrants that are being used like human weapons. Of course, officials are going to try to move you away from the border, away from sitting literally on the border entry point and obstructing the free travel and commerce of those who do have a right to come in and go out. So, DEEF, the organization for the integral development of families in Mexico, DEEF, was out there telling parents they had to relocate to a shelter away from the border where the camp is located. No, you have to get away from the border because of what you're doing at the border. The parents were either given the option to go to the shelter with their children if they wanted, and then they interviewed some of the people there who said, they told us we needed to get ready because we were leaving, but we didn't want to go. Another woman that has been there since August with her husband and her 3 children said, listen to this, okay? Listen to this part. This is important. This is what Yamali Flores of Honduras, the woman that has been there with her husband and 3 kids, ages 7, 9, and 13, what she said. Remember, she's in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
In Mexico, refusing help to go to the shelters in Mexico. And they asked her about the situation with the Mexican institution going around supposedly snatching people's kids, saying, go to the shelter, we're going to take your kids. And this is what she said. Quote, the United States needs to help from the other side because we don't want to be in Mexico. We need protection. Are you hearing the message? Is it blowing your mind?
Wow. It's so out of touch on what's really happening. The United States isn't going to go into Mexico and help these families to cross the border. And it's like, and it's that sort of propaganda. Once again, is that they're trying to make Mexico look like the bad people and make it look like the United States, it's their fault. And also that the United States has to get in there and help them with human rights. I mean, it is so far from the truth. It is so far from reality. It's so far from an actual policy that these people have been brainwashed and they're being used to take that message on the road.
Now listen to how incoherent and crazy this is. I'm going to read to you about another woman they interviewed who said that Deef came and tried to snatch her kids. She is from Uganda and her name is Shiama Bukirwa. She just got to the tent city recently, on Thursday, in fact. And it says she arrived cold and hungry with her 2 children, including 2-year-old Jasmine. This is a toddler. She said that Deef tried to take her children. Quote, "They told me that they would take my children, so I have 2 options. One option is I go with them to the shelter. If I don't go with them, they would take the kids by force." None of the families that they spoke to for this article said that they sent their children with an official. So they basically they refused to go to the shelters, and nobody actually took anybody's kids. That's what they're trying to tell you here.
Mm-hmm.
All of them still expressed fear that Mexican officials would return and try to take their kids, obviously. Then they interview a woman named Helen Perry. I want to look more into who Global Response Management, the nonprofit she works for, where she volunteers. They're all volunteers.
Oh, yeah, everybody volunteers.
Nobody pays for any of this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you believe that?
Mm-hmm.
They all do it for free, and they work for months and months and months and months. Some of them don't even have shoes, like Nicole Ramos of Al Otro Lado.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, somehow,
they travel all over the place.
by magic, they volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
So Helen Perry, who was volunteering in a medical tent with 2 doctors from this organization, again, called Global Response Management, told this publication that their staff had witnessed Deef officials approaching families and telling them that they were going to take the kids. An American says it's true,
That's
so
right.
it must have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And think about how messed up that is, that it's all of these American activists and foreign NGOs that are in Mexico trying to make Mexicans look racist and xenophobic for simply trying to have order, and people following the law and people not putting children at risk. You know, like the stuff that you would see here, right?
Right.
And obviously, think about the lack of resources in Mexico compared to the resources we have here in the United States. And the migrants and their allies are complaining about it.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if we didn't provide those social services to all these migrants that are coming here that want them, that want to have access to medical care, that want to have access to education, to shelter, to emergency services, right? And we're like, no, you shouldn't want any of that stuff from this government. It's a racist government. Probably trying to take your kids from you.
Exactly.
I mean, this is very interesting what this woman says. She says, quote, "They were telling people that because of the conditions, you mean the weather conditions, the lack of food, the lack of medical care, the fact that there are no roofs, or running toilets? Because of the conditions, they were going to take their kids. So they were saying they were violating the rights of the children, their own parents, if they are their parents. Because we do know that there are many cases of children that are being taken, trafficked, smuggled, although children can't consent because they're kids. And this woman, Helen Perry from Global Response Management, goes on to say, that's obviously a very concerning change of events, especially because that falls as a human rights violation.
Oh, boy.
She says she's a nurse practitioner from Jackson, Florida. And then she goes on. Here's the propaganda piece, okay? Because remember, we know organized crime is involved here. In all of this, we know organized crime is playing a role. They're trying to put a pretty veneer over the top of it and go, it's human rights and we're helping. You need to send donations so we can keep these people in the tents in the streets.
Yep.
But I told you, that is not what the kids need. It's not what the migrants need. It's not for the best of their well-being, for their safety, for the safety of the community that's already there, that's being imposed upon by migrants that are acting like mercenaries. But here's what this person has to say. She says, Helen Perry says, these are not people choosing to live in these conditions. These are people being placed in these conditions because of the safety situation in Matamoros. So it's safer to stay in a tent in the street than to go inside of a building? What?
Yeah.
She goes on, I feel like it's a little counterproductive to take people's children when instead we could be working to improve the conditions that they can stay in safe places. And you think the most safe place is in a tent in the streets in one of the most dangerous cities in the world? Are you cray-cray? Mm-hmm. This doesn't make any sense any more than it did when it was coming from the pseudo-activists in Tijuana.
Yep.
Am I the only one that sees the redonkulousness of this?
It's the same. It's the same model. It's the same model and the same sort of. In fact, what she just said in that quote was that improve the conditions.
Of what?
Improve the conditions. Well, you want them to build houses in the street for them now, or just ship them all to the United States? Improve the conditions. Just send them to the U.S. You know, and it's that same sort of thing of what they were doing in Tijuana, where it's like, they shouldn't go to that shelter over there because they're really mean and they don't feed them and they can't leave and they don't have any rights and all this sort of stuff. There are thousands of people in the street. I went to those streets. I saw how small of an area that was. That recreation center was very small for 5,000 people. I mean, people were crowded. When you have crowded people, you have a lot of problems. The municipalities were trying to do the best for the people and trying to come up with things that were better living conditions than just being on the street. So it's the same message, different community, different group of people, but the same message.
It is the same message. And it is exactly as you suspected. They are trying to get this narrative of get them inside the United States as quickly as possible. Because the very next thing they talk about is the migrant protocols, the migrant protection protocols, as they're called. Mm-hmm. Which is now, under the Trump administration, forcing people to stay in Mexico to await their asylum hearings. That's what this is really about. It's about knocking on the policy of this administration to stop people from taking advantage of the loophole in asylum seeking. That is exactly what the president is trying to do, but these people want to cloak this whole conversation under human rights violation.
Yep, exactly.
I want to pause briefly to thank the big troll. Big troll.
The big troll.
I send much love to the big troll that watches our show because they made a donation. Thank you for the donation. And they said, I want to remind people that research is not always free. Let's all help provide for more research. Thank you for your support. And if you want to support or become a sponsor of our programming, you can do that, and it is tax deductible. What's our new sponsor, Duke?
Oh, our new sponsor?
Yep.
Is Make My Life Great Again, PalomaForTrump.com. That's Paloma, 4, Trump.com.
Yes.
Make my life great again.
You can, too. You can be a sponsor, a supporter. You can make a tax deductible donation to help us keep our work going. And let me share with you something you probably don't know. All of this is also meant to raise the profile of the people involved, including migrants like Maria Mesa, who end up coming over into the United States, who end up on all of the covers, all of the newspaper covers and all of the television stations, like the guy, Oviedo, from the musical group El Puente, that started this new house, this new El Puente house. And days after they inaugurated this new shelter for women and children, with this guy who had been part of the group of people that stayed in the streets in the tent city in Tijuana, like Maria Mesa, like so many of these migrants that became famous because they came and they got in. They worked directly with the organizers of these smuggling operations and they got in. Hey, crazy lady, thank you for your donation too.
Crazy lady.
She says, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Love all of you, listeners and followers of A Mexican Crossing Lines. I wanted to share with you their latest song.
Oh.
And it's very interesting. I will read to you what it says in English, so you will want to turn down the actual song.
Okay.
A lot. I'll
right.
even put on my headphones for this.
All right. I can stop it if you need me to.
All right. Well, I want you to hear the propaganda, Duke. So pay attention. Remember, this is the guy. Sorry, just so that people remember. If you don't know, I showed you how certain groups of migrants, certain people that are in the caravan that are working with the smugglers and organizers of the smuggling operations and organizations like Pueblos Sin Fronteras, Border Angels, Al Otro Lado. I've told you about all of these different organizations and groups that are either escorting, as they like to call it, traveling with them, moving them from one side of the border to the other, no more deaths, etc. All of these groups, they work with the shelters too. And Oviedo came with the caravan that was in the streets in Tijuana. He was one of the voices, the spokespeople for the migrants on so many news channels, in so many articles. Guess what? The same guy got asylum just recently. So see how all the people that help and work with, that are used by the smuggling operation organizers, are the ones that get remunerated, that get rewarded. Thank you very much, Sophia. Sophia says, check out the website. You're referring to our new sponsor, Paloma number 4 Trump. You're right. It says, and you are right. Don't promote thuggery. Thanks for your support. I wanted to share with you the song, and now I want you to listen. I'm going to read what he says. Listen to the propaganda. He's now in the U.S. He's already recorded and have put out this new song from his band, El Puente. Isn't that neat? You can come to this country, become a sensation, put out a record. Here's their song. I don't even know what it's called, but we'll share the link. It's called The Bridge El Puente. Turn it down. There's Mr. Oviedo. The migrant of the caravan. After many days of having abandoned his homeland, leaving my family, and the dreams that I couldn't fulfill, I realize that every day I struggle with the reality that I have to carry out what I decided to do. Nobody knows what it's like to be an immigrant. Not those who came, not those that the Mexican or the Americans that think that we're the scourge of Central America. Many nights in this little tent that's been my bed in my home for many days. I start to allow myself to dream that I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it. And I'm going to fulfill my American dream of working hard and help my people and have a dream, an opportunity that's been given to me because I trust in God. He's opened a lot of doors for me where I am. But at the same time, I'm scared. Afraid of returning to my country. Not just because of what they'll do to me. They may want to take my life. But if not, because there are many Hondurans who are there waiting to make fun of those and call them failures who get returned. Because they rejoice in those who are deported back. They mock those who left their country. Those who left seeking an opportunity to get out of their misery. Because they speak out against these migrants that have been returned to their country without realizing that those who you make fun of just tried to reach a border. My footsteps are recorded in the ground in my memory of my life, my family, the country. The memories that couldn't fit in my backpack. But I may have left Honduras, but Honduras never will leave me. With every breath, a drop of sweat, with every tear that comes out of my eyes, every fear of being deported, every fear of being kidnapped, every step represents a sacrifice, and that is priceless. I ask all of you, perhaps do I not deserve to achieve my dreams? Don't judge the migrant from the caravan who is deported back to their country, because if you never lived that journey of that migrant, you can't speak, or let alone say. Thank you very much, Oregon sunshine. I'd love to have some Oregon sunshine. It's
Definitely.
it's getting very bleak and cold here. Although I will say I enjoy having the fires in our fireplace. That's kind of nice.
I didn't pick up any sticks today, so no fire tonight unless we burn our junk mail. But Oregon Sunshine, thank you. You're a frequent commenter on our YouTube channel. You tend to comment on almost all the videos, and you say some very insightful things, and sometimes I reply to them. But I do read all your comments. Thank you for the support.
Yes, and I want to let you know that the propaganda goes beyond music and documentary films, as I've shown you, and books, all of the stuff that they're putting out, which is a way for them to continue their message, to legitimize that message, and and also, because it's incredible to me how people react when you question any of the things that these folks are doing. Do you remember the lady, another one of the ladies that got expedited entry into these United States? Lady Frijoles. You remember her, Miriam Zelaya?
Oh, yeah.
Lady Frijoles, Lady Beans, as she was known in Mexico, that caused the Mexican people to want to stone her. Well, not really, not literally, or at least that's not what the people of Mexico said they intended for her. But she took the anger and the many death threats as her way into the United States, her ticket to asylum, claiming that her life was in jeopardy being in Mexico. Doesn't that sound familiar?
Yep.
It's so dangerous to be in Tijuana. It's so dangerous to be in Matamoros. But not if you're living in the streets in a tent. Then it's super safe. But she had to get out of there because she insulted beans, and Mexico's staple is beans and tortillas. And she said they feed us pig slop.
Yeah.
That's what it translated to, what she said. They feed us pig slop at these shelters. And her video and her story went viral. And people lit her up on social media and dragged her on Twitter. This woman was hated so badly, she made a video apologizing and crying. And then, much to the shock and surprise of everyone, after having the good fortune of being expedited into the U.S., she and her sister stabbed the woman that they were kind enough to get a sponsorship from, and they wanted to stab her to death. They attempted to stab her to death. And I don't know how they escaped prosecution for attempted murder, or at least something very, very, with a sentence of some sort.
Yes.
I don't know how they avoided that. Because I think they were in jail and then they got deported after 6 months, or they went to trial, or they went to court and they only got a sentence of some kind of, time served, get him back home type of a deal. And I was like, really? Wow. Why was that? Maybe the court didn't have any sympathy for a woman who I believe was also Honduran, who had pity on these women and gave them a home and was having them work with her. I believe she also was their employer. They stabbed her.
Wow.
There was blood everywhere. Look it up. She did that after she managed to make it into the media internationally, get herself an expedited entry into the U.S. See how similar this is to Oviedo's story? See how similar this is to Maria Mesa, the woman that got assistance from Paloma Zuniga Gallant, Paloma for Trump, Paloma for fraud. These people all have this just land on your feet, get what you need type of stories. Yeah. It's incredible. And so does Lady Frijoles, because after she got that slap on the wrist and sent back home, where according to this song by El Puente singer and recent asylum recipient Oviedo, is a horror. Yeah. People are waiting to make fun of you and kick you when you're down and call you a failure. That's what it said in the song. Yep. Right? But not for Lady Frijoles. She went back and they offered her a TV show. And she became the new, it's like The View type of a TV show, but like if The View and The Price is Right had a baby and there were products and talking about stuff, on social media or in the news and politics, this would be that show. And I think it's called Las Tres Comadres, which is the three godmothers. Okay. Because, I don't know. It's a thing where, women are supposed to gossip, or I don't know. Anyway, point is, she got a job on TV as a regular, like as a position, a paid position. After coming home, being one of the worst examples for your entire country of what you should do after you get an asylum expedited entry. But her charmed life does not stop there. Guess what, Duke? What? Turns out she had political ties, or it is alleged by this article in El Caminante, that she had political ties to the party of the dictator, Juan Orlando Hernandez. Wow. In the headline here, it says, Lady Frijoles was an infiltrator from Juan Orlando Hernandez, the president of Honduras, within the Caravan. She was a plant. Wow. From his party. A spy. Thank you, Lattes45, for your support donation. Latessa says, come here the right way and you are more than welcome to stay. Yes, and protesting at the border and shutting down the border, you're getting into terrorist activity. Like this is even before you come into the country. This is how you're behaving. This is not a good look. Not a good look. This woman, according to this publication, says that a human rights defender in Honduras wrote, who just this week was given some kind of an award for his work in New York, said that Miriam Celaya, better known as Lady Frijoles or Lady Beans, was could be a person infiltrated from Juan Orlando Hernandez's government in Honduras into the Caravan, because supposedly Celaya has connections to the Nationalist Party. And it quotes Serpas, the human rights defender, Marislova Serpas, as saying, there was a lot of people infiltrating the caravans from Jo's government, that they were there specifically to wreak havoc.
Okay.
So that they would make the whole caravan look bad. All migrants look bad, said Serpas in a recent interview when they were receiving the Human Rights Award, Zabel Human Rights Award. And that is Human Rights First Organization Award. So this woman, and it looks to me like many people, like Oviedo, who, by the way, was also called a human rights defender, and didn't he turn out to be some kind of a clergy member or pastor for gang members? Well, a lot of these people connected to organized religion in their countries and human rights defense, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But the reality is that they are confronting the police. They're confronting Border Patrol at our borders. In this next video, you're going to see Hugo Castro of the Border Angels, who is in the back of a vehicle along with Dulce Garcia, who is the interim director, who is a lawyer, and the interim director of Border Angels, plus coordinator of volunteers for Border Angels, Marian Ruiz. All of them were in the car and were detained by Border Patrol because Border Patrol stopped them and said that they had seen them, that they had been tailing them apparently, or following them, and had seen them put or allow drugs and or migrants in their vehicle. This was not said on video. So I'm about to play the video for you with this, the tail end of this confrontation with U.S. Border Patrol. It looks like an operative because there's not one vehicle behind this car. You'll notice in the video there are a bunch of vehicles, and because of the angle that the video is being taken from the back seat of the car by Hugo Castro through the rear window, it is difficult to ascertain how many more vehicles are behind the two big, looks like a Humvee and some other kind of truck that the Border Patrol agents are in. And the Border Patrol told them that they had seen something happen in their observations, and so they stopped them, and they refused to provide their identification in the form of a driver's license to Border Patrol because Border Patrol isn't the highway patrol. So therefore they don't have any authority to ask for licenses. Roll tape. Tell me what you think.
Okay, there's the cop.
He
Border
walks away
Patrol.
from the window.
Walks away from. Just goes to the back.
That's a Border Patrol agent.
There's 3 or 4 Border Patrol agents, a truck. They're back
Get
there.
the cherries on.
Yep. He's talking to the other ones. Okay, yeah, he's talking about that they can't. It's illegal asking for this identification.
In the car, they're talking amongst each other, saying this.
Okay. Now the guy's coming back.
Mm-hmm.
He has someone's license in his hand, probably the driver. And you can see another car to the right.
The lawyer that's sitting in the passenger seat in the front says, and she's undocumented, by the way, so she can't. She doesn't leave the country, but she said it at the ABS conference that she is undocumented.
Yep.
So she can't cross the border into Mexico because she would have a difficult time coming back into the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, you
she's
do.
in the U.S. right now in this vehicle.
Do you not have a driver's license?
You just identified yourself and he's immigration and that's all he asked.
Okay. If you do not have a driver's license, I'm going to call California Highway Patrol over here and they're going to cite you and tow the car. Unless you show me a driver's license right now.
Right, except that would be a violation of SB 54 because they are not supposed to cooperate to help with immigration.
Well, it's not for an immigration crime now, is it, if he doesn't have a driver's license?
Right, so you are going to actually
So
spend
I can
resources
enforce
to
those
call
type...
someone
Ma'am,
that is...
I am not talking to you, I'm talking to him. So you sit there, you already don't want to talk to me, you don't want to do anything for me. Sir, if you don't want to show me a driver's license, I will call sheriff.
Okay. I am his lawyer, by the way. I do
SB
have...
54 says that I cannot have them assist me in immigration-related things,
Right,
right?
it sounds like you were asking them to
No,
come and
I'm
assist
asking-
you.
Yes.
Because your jurisdiction has nothing to do whether someone has the ability to...
Why don't you Google what my actual authorities are?
Okay. I will do so. Thank you so much for educating me.
Ma'am, I'm not
I am
here
advising
to be
my
patronized,
I'm advising my lawyer not to.
Okay, I'm going to call
come
sheriff
here.
then.
Thank you.
Can I help you with any documents?
Now listen.
Pues se pueden dar cuenta de este tipo de
You can
agentes
see these type of agents,
racistas
racists.
que quieren actuar por encima de su autoridad.
They wanna
so you
abuse their
probably
authority.
have noticed this is type of border patrol agents that act above his authority, because he's not a police officer. He doesn't have the right to ask for a driver's license, and he's doing it.
Absolutely none.
No me ha regresado mis cosas.
Don't let them look through our things.
Yeah.
Somebody said in the vehicle.
Okay.
Nothing he can do to force me to turn over my identification documents.
There's nothing they can do to force me to give them my identification document. And he noticed the
Pues a
officer
esto es a
said
lo que se enfrentan
that she
nuestros
didn't want to help and didn't
nuestros
want to show her
hermanos
anything about her documentation
cuando
because she
quieren
is
cruzar.
undocumented.
De repente llegan una redada de agentes, 4 o 5 agentes.
There's
Fíjate
about
que
4 or
les
5
voy a
agents.
contar algo que me sucedió a mí.
And then he says, you know, something
Aquí
happened to
donde
me.
está adelantito está
Here,
un
a little bit
casino, el
more
Golden Acre.
forward, there's a
Ajá,
casino.
pasamos algo así. Una vez yo venía caminando
I was
porque,
walking,
pues, y
'cause,
venía
you
de
know,
San Diego de corte precisamente y
So,
conseguí un ride al casino y no
I got
había
a ride to the
salida del
casino.
casino, me vino caminando.
and I walked,
Me rodearon como
walking.
10 agentes.
I had
Y yo
10
le dije lo mismo, "Oye,
agents
¿por qué me pides mi ID?"
surrounded me, and I was like, why are you asking me for my
obligaron
ID?
a hincarme.
So you guys
He's like, I'm not even in a car.
You don't have to say you're U.S. citizens and you guys don't have any obligation to show any.
You don't have to say you're a U.S. citizen. You have no obligation to show them any identification.
Say like, oh, estoy conduciendo un negocio.
Because
Estoy checando lo que sea.
Sí, porque no está uno ni obligado en los checkpoints, se supone.
well, yeah,
Y
he
aquí-
says you're not
aquí no es
even
un
obligated
checkpoint.
in a checkpoint, and this
No.
isn't a checkpoint.
Nothing.
Nothing. And if you know that there's other folks that are undocumented, if you're a U.S. citizen, you're an ally, it's like that's your time that you can protect other folks in the car. Porque qué tal que si él no tiene sus documentos ahorita, then you can be like, I refuse to, because we're all in it together. ¿Y cómo van a saber quiénes son ciudadanos y quiénes no? Porque ellos no tienen la autoridad de obligarte a entregar ningún tipo de documentación. It's up to them to determine whether you are documented or not. And as soon as you give them your identification, they're already starting to put in information on the forms that they need filled out. Y sabes,
Man, can you imagine if the Border Patrol had known then that the lady that said that she's a lawyer, which I'm assuming she is. We ID'd our organization. And so they're just...
They think that we're here smuggling people. Really? They didn't see anyone get on.
Congratulations, Lewis. You have an active driver's license. Would have been a lot easier if you just gave it to me, buddy. So, my K9 is occupied and looking for the people there in that area where you guys just drove down real slow and all that good stuff, and I'm not wasting my time anymore with you guys. So, you guys have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Así que dice que no va a desperdiciar más su tiempo con nosotros.
Yeah, they're not going to waste their time with us because we know our rights. Otherwise, if we hadn't known, they would have searched the whole car. And without having the authority to do it. These are the tactics they always utilize to intimidate people, to force people to cooperate with them. Getting your name, where were you, and open your car. They don't have the authority to do it. And they can't bring the sheriff over to have them check if you have a driver's license.
None of their business where somebody has a driver's license or not. They're here to enforce immigration law, not state law. You guys are free to go. Thank you.
The CBP said you guys are free to go.
Get out of here.
Because they're sitting there filming and doing a little video flexing on the CBP. And the CBP did not even know that the people in that vehicle, the driver in that vehicle, is transporting an undocumented person. Mm-hmm. The person in the passenger seat is undocumented by her own words.
Yep.
And they're taking they're giving out the plate numbers in their video. So you can stop it now. So, Duke, what do you think about that? Do you realize that they were transporting an undocumented person in the vehicle?
Oh yeah. She was very nervous because she's undocumented. You know, she's an attorney. She said she was part of DACA, or at the ABS conference we went to, but she's not documented. And she's pretty nervous. And we used to do know your rights trainings when it comes to law enforcement. And there's plenty of truth about which agencies has the authority to ask for certain documents, and even down to watching films about that. Even Highway Patrol really can't ask you for your driver's license, vehicle registration, because they're not under the right category in the law. And some people will argue that and go on in their pleasure transveyance, or whatever they call it, not a car. And so I believe in knowing your rights, but these guys were basically flaunting. They were doing what they were being potentially accused of. They were transporting several people, and they were just holding their ground around them not being able to ask for that identification or call Highway Patrol. And, so they were holding their ground on that, but at the same time, they were very nervous because they were just inches away of getting arrested.
Remember, she is also the interim director because Enrique Morones is on break for some reason. Remember?
Yeah, that's right.
She is the interim director in an organization that planned a narco wedding.
That's right.
She is the interim director of an organization that is got members of the organization, if not herself included, on a watch list. Mm-hmm. That is being investigated, an organization that is being investigated for human smuggling and trafficking of people and children. She is the interim director of an organization that has involved and is working with multiple organizations that have had members of those organizations arrested and or investigated, etc. Mm-hmm. I have shown you all of that.
Yep.
And she's sitting in a car arguing with the Border Patrol like, what? What are you going to do about it? That's cuckoo.
Yeah.
That's cuckoo. Like, that's so brazen to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of people that are here undocumented for a variety of reasons. You may or may not have sympathy for them, but at least they're not like working closely with organizers or organizations or heading them. even in an interim capacity, that have members of their organization that have been kidnapped, that have any kind of ties to organized crime, and that are being accused or investigated for human trafficking.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Duh!
Mm-hmm.
But these people don't seem to care.
No.
They don't care. They act with impunity, and at the same time, they want your sympathy for them.
Yep.
Border Angels recently had a fundraiser for Hugo Castro on his page for $20,000. $20,000.
What?
Yeah. And at the time that I took this screen capture, they'd already raised almost
3,000.
2,500.
Yep.
But listen,
Jesus.
remember the last show that I talked about them? They were raising money. He lost a truck and he lost a phone.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's
And
right.
then he found the truck. And then I don't know if he ever got his phone back.
Yeah.
But they were raising funds for this and raising funds for that. They raised funds when he got kidnapped.
Yeah, that's right.
They raised thousands and thousands of dollars to transport him here and transport him there.
Mm-hmm.
And now they want $20,000 for his birthday?
Yeah.
Right after the National Guard broke into that migrant shelter on Playas?
Mm-hmm.
This is brazen.
Yeah, it is.
This is brazen. Like, yeah, these people, they think that they're in the mafia.
Mm-hmm.
They act like it.
They have immunity.
They can just do whatever they want and raise money off of it.
Yeah, no kidding.
And they have a lot of people that are in the mainstream that are normalizing them. Organizations like Amnesty International. Remember, Border Angels was just in a video that you saw with your own two eyes and heard with your own two ears, in which Border Patrol says, and the undocumented lawyer sitting in the driver's seat says,
Passenger seat.
says, we're being accused of smuggling people.
Mm-hmm.
And they think we're smuggling people, she says.
Yeah, which they are.
So they were in an area, a specific area in the southern border where they were stopped and investigated. There's a Conexión Migrante article that says that they were, let's see. I thought it gave me their location on here, but apparently it does not. They threatened to call the California Highway Patrol.
Yep.
So that should give you an indicator of where they were. So they were at a specific location. In Castro's Facebook post about this, he says that they were looking for places to drop water for the migrants.
Oh, I see.
Uh-huh.
That thing again.
Yeah, we were looking for places to drop water for the migrants. Like no more deaths, people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what they do too. They were just looking for spots, like one does, with an undocumented lawyer in the passenger seat, and right in an area that's being obviously watched, investigated by Border Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells a story while they're waiting for Border Patrol in the car. He goes, "Hey, up a little further, a while back, I was walking." You were just walking around in this
Desert
area? That's what smugglers do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what coyotes do. He was out there and he was like, and, I was walking around because he says, I was walking, not driving. He makes the distinction. I was walking by myself, he says, because, because you know? No, nobody knows why in the hell you'd be walking around by yourself out in the desert and make that distinction in the conversation, because he's filming himself and he says it in this way. He goes, oh, let me tell you a story. A little ways up ahead here on this road, I was walking through the desert. I was going to the casino, but I don't think he said that he hadn't made it to the casino yet, or he'd just come out of the casino. And 8 Border Patrol people surrounded him. He said, I was walking because you know. So this is something that he and his buddy Irineo Mujica of Pueblos Sin Fronteras can be found doing on any given Tuesday, escorting some undocumented migrants through the desert or through wherever. That's what they do. And they have the backing and the normalization of human rights organizations like Amnesty International. By the way, the top post on Hugo Castro's page is about Scott Warren and his upcoming trial and no more deaths. And it's also on the mind of Amnesty International of Cantabria. Don't know where that is, but it says, Mr. DA in Arizona at USAO_Arizona. Drop the charges and do not send Scott Warren of No More Deaths to jail for 10 years. Giving water to migrants is not a crime. And then it has a link. Demand the charges be dropped. The same thing is now appearing on all of the pages of all of the people involved in these shenanigans. And of course, Wendy Fry, that reporter, that was one of that broke the story from that, what was it? San Diego 7 or something. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She's been tweeting about the other group of people we have to remember in the mix, the LGBT community that is forced to wait in Mexico. They're vulnerable too. Mm-hmm. It's a big pity party for all of these people forced against their will to stay in tents, to stay in these horrid conditions, in this horrible pity party where you have to continually donate to these nonprofit organizations to help them stay in the tents, and refuse the help of the government in Mexico, and refuse to get jobs, and refuse political asylum. Because, you know, the reality is that these folks don't want that. What they want is something quite different. And the people behind them usually have political leanings, or political reasons. In this next tweet, No More Deaths posts about what's really at stake here. Everything that is going on with this case. It says you can give to their GoFundMe to stop border. I'll show you the GoFundMe in a minute. It's for victims of Border Patrol. And it says, support family members of those killed in cross-border shootings by the Border Patrol. The Supreme Court is going to be hearing a historic case on November 12th on this issue of Border Patrol killing people in Mexico, shooting over the border. And all of this is going to happen on the same day that hashtag Scott Warren has his case start for the second time in Tucson, Arizona. Hey, give to the fund.
That's right.
So they want the name and the story of Scott Warren of No More Deaths to be synonymous with the murder of Mexicans by Border Patrol. Right?
Right.
And there's a link to their GoFundMe. Where... Oh, maybe it's way down there. Did I skip a bunch of stuff?
No, we already showed the GoFundMe on that other page.
Okay. there's another tweet by another woman who also got in trouble with the law around the same time that was in the Intercept article that I shared with you, named Anna Adelstein.
Mm-hmm.
And she tweeted what, Duke?
Last May, I was called a smuggler, told the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply, and arrested at Lukeville Port of Entry while accompanying an asylum seeker. The ACLU is now suing on mine and two Pueblo Sin Fronteras organizers' behalf.
That's the Alex Mensing lawsuit.
So more lawsuits.
So she is now joined in this lawsuit.
Oh,
You
yeah.
remember who she is.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole's got a lawsuit. Alex has got a lawsuit.
Everyone has a lawsuit.
Anna has a lawsuit. All of these different organizations, they all have lawsuits. Those lawsuits cost money. Remember the Intercept article? We'll share some of these links on our shows with you so you can go back and check them out. But remember, these articles by people like Mr. Devereaux, Ryan Devereaux, who's incessantly been supporting all of these folks without scratching deeper into what's behind them, have always been saying that the victims here are the activists, the reporters,
That's right.
the journalists, the photographers who are defending these poor people in another country, of course,
Yep.
because they're in Mexico trying to demand that these things be done. And the migrants in Mexico are also trying to demand that Mexico do things. Neither one of them are even Mexicans, but they still feel they have the right.
Yep.
In this tweet, Mohammed Tajdar says that the ACLU of SoCal is in this lawsuit for Anna and Alex Mensing and Jeff Valenzuela, who are the quote-unquote migrant right activists targeted by the U.S. government for arrest and surveillance.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no. And then there is
Oh, here's a no more death.
a link.
Go fraud meme.
Here's the GoFundMe that No More Deaths link went to. It's the Justice for the Victims of Border Patrol, U.S. Border Patrol.
Okay.
How did they find and how do they share this money with them? Who knows?
Yep, really.
But
how do people get
does
access
anybody
to money?
check?
Yeah,
Who
really.
knows?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? We'll never know.
That's right.
And in this posting in the ACLU of SoCal about, this is the next one. Yeah, that one.
You want this one?
Yep. There's an article from the ACLU of SoCal, and it is called ACLU SoCal.org. Maybe you don't have the link, but I will share some of these links for people to check out. You can find this all at aclu.socal.org / and you can just probably Google this. The ACLU sued on behalf of an unlawfully arrested human rights worker, and she is the one that just joined on October 24th. This was posted to their website at ACLU SoCal. And in it, they talk about the plaintiffs and the law firm that is handling it, and it's called Kirkland and Ellis, and the conversation between a frontline defenders organizer named Aaron Kilbride and Anna Adelstein about, what happened. In May, Kilbride traveled to Sonoita, Mexico. This is the area where Irineo Mujica, Pueblo Sin Fronteras, has that shelter and has been accused of trafficking and smuggling people over the border, along with organizations like No More Deaths, like Scott Warren. If you will recall, it was in this area that they were going to charge Scott Warren with collaborating with Irineo Mujica. Mm-hmm. This second trial no longer includes that charge. Irineo Mujica no longer has anything to do with this. Interestingly.
Yeah.
If you recall, Frontline Defenders is a group that we showed you more about that is heavily involved with the promotion of all of the people that are working with closely to these human smugglers.
Yeah.
So Kilbride is not an unbiased person to cover this for the ACLU. But Adelstein's intention on May 5th was to simply, she claims, observe what happened to asylum seekers, an asylum seeker in particular who she helped to go into the United States. She said Kilbride ended up waiting for 4 hours at an OXXO convenience store in Mexico before Adelstein came out. Anna said, I'll never forget the moment that I walked out of the Lukeville port of entry and saw you still standing and sitting in that OXXO. And Aaron says, me neither. Anna, I'm so grateful you were there, Aaron. One of the things that's interesting in your case is that despite what happened that night, Renee was able to present his asylum claim. That goes to show everything happened to you. Everything that happened to you was entirely an act of retaliation. It was not about them trying to stop our friend from seeking asylum. It was about retaliation toward the American citizen who attempted him to do it, as an indicator of the fear of solidarity across citizenship lines. The way Customs and Border Protection responded to the letter that you had from the ACLU with utter contempt indicates that it wasn't making you any safer. If anything, it was raising that officer's it sounded like very masculine, reactiveness. They were angry at you because you were attempting to deploy your privilege in a certain way. I mean, the propaganda goes on like this for many more paragraphs, but I wanted to give you a taste of what they were talking about. And to remind you, she got someone an expedited entry to request asylum in the United States, not waiting like so many had to in Mexico and do still to this day. See how they play God.
Yeah.
In essence, they get to pick and choose who gets expedited entry. So going on to the No More Deaths tweets, here No More Deaths talks about how they door knocked prior to the trial. You want to read that one?
Dr. Scott Warren's retirement is imminent. Come out with us in this week leading up to knock on as many doors as possible. Leaving from a different location each day. Register at bit.ly blah 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 for details.
And they also did phone banking.
And they
Check
did
this
phone
one out.
banking. Want to help? There are 48 days left before Dr. Warren's retrial. Help us phone bank from wherever you live.
Is this
Sign
even
up.
legal?
Well, actually, it doesn't have any effect. You know, it's
But can you do that when they're trying to have a jury trial?
Yeah, you can do whatever you want unless someone wants to pursue you for jury tampering or something like that, you know. But you can, people want to protest, law enforcement want to protest courts all the time. You know, when I was trained as an organizer, we would try to do stuff around it for awareness. But it really, you know, unless you're going to storm the courtroom and stuff and have people get arrested, it's really a risky thing to do. You can get thrown in jail for contempt of court just by looking sideways at the judge, you know. It's a very vulnerable place to be because judges can actually throw you in jail for up to 40 hours and you don't get an attorney. You know, so we were never trained to go disrupt court or anything like that. But people have been doing it a lot, you know, and what it is, it's a way to get awareness about their cause, what they're doing, their fundraising. That's what it's about. It's not really about, oh, great, I'm going to go help this person out. What can I do? Well, you can give us some money, you know, and you're not going to do anything. You might write a letter to some senator or something like that, but that's not going to have an influence on a jury trial and a judge.
And they're so brazen about how they will do what they feel, even though it's very, very clear ties to organized crime and human smuggling. Doesn't matter. Does not matter. I guess those are the eggs that get cracked to make the human smuggling omelet.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Because it is a business. And so when they keep telling you, because people are making billions of dollars hand over fist while exploiting humans, including children. when they keep telling you, oh, no, this is human rights defenders. They're volunteers. No. It's an appearance. It's propaganda. It's part of the pity party. I have holes in my shoes.
Yeah.
My car is 21 years old. I would give everyone I know the shirt off my back. These giving water is not a crime. All of this song and dance is so that you will not remember that this is $1 billion industry. People are being exploited and that people are getting hurt. To force the idea that the only way that you can talk about these people is as human rights defenders, no matter who they're connected to or what they are being accused of, like this Scott Warren and the trial for no more deaths. Tim Sellers, who previously did an article on this, I talked about this before.
Yeah, you did.
I talked about him before, and he talked to me. He called me and asked me. He says in this tweet, could you read that one, dude?
Federal prosecutors want any mention of Donald Trump banned from the upcoming trial of Southern Arizona humanitarian aid volunteer. It's unfair to mention the president, they argue. Devoid Alex reports.
What do you think about that? The prosecutor knows that this No More Deaths second trial, that they're
Going to spin the issues and take it away from the focus of what the trial's actually about. They're going to interfere. And so that's taken totally out of context. I'm sure there was an argument. There was probably a brief on why they would want to do such a thing. Because they feel it would be used to fuel something. It would create bias in the jurors. It would it would be irrelevant. You know, they didn't put any of that in that little tweet. You know, they just said they're doing bad things. The court's fixed. You know.
Well, there is an article in the Tucson.com, and what it says is that this argument that you claim was actually made by the prosecution because they want to ban Scott Warren from using this to deflect from his charges.
Yeah.
His charges don't have anything to do with the president of the United States. He doesn't have to mention him. I told you that many of these activists and these organizations that are connected to human smuggling or to smugglers or to traffickers or the people that kidnap children or feed drugs to the migrants or any of the other things I have shown you that they are doing, which at the very least are unethical and wrong and at the worst are criminal, is we are human rights defenders. How dare you talk about that?
Yeah.
How dare you insinuate that this is going? And it's not an insinuation. It is a fact. It is a known fact. And in this case, they had weeks worth of phone conversations and text messages coordinating, moving, smuggling two undocumented people over the border between Irineo Mujica, between the two smuggled people, and Scott Warren.
Yeah.
Locations, directions, Irineo Mujica drove the two people, was caught with undocumented people in his car. Don't you remember all this, dude?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What does that have to do with Trump? Explain to me why it would even matter. Do you understand?
Yeah. It wouldn't matter. Like I said, it's deflecting. It's taking things off the focus. This guy's slippery. He's already made it through one trial, and stuff's got skated over there, and he has another one, and it's given plenty of time for that spin. It's like they are prosecuting humanitarian people who are doing the work of God. They're being persecuted. I'm surprised they haven't done a real, focus, martyrdom type focus instead of what they're doing. They're doing the human rights thing.
You are absolutely right. And if you will recall, there was a religious rights argument that was made this very same religious rights argument that was made at Standing Rock.
That's right.
By the Native Americans. And I told everyone that they tried to use this precedent for the Standing Rock cases, and they're trying to use the same precedent, legal precedent, in this case.
Yeah.
Exactly that, Duke. But they're arguing that Warren's rights, that his constitutional rights to speech would be violated if they gagged him from saying Trump.
Yep.
Because he said, I don't even understand why he would care. Don't mention Donald Trump. And
Yeah.
be like, fine,
Fine.
I can go without mentioning him for the days I am in trial. Easy. But no, they're making a case, not a federal case, but you know what I mean? They're making a big case out of this. They're making a huge mountain out of it. Like, they can't stop him from talking about Donald Trump during his trial because that would be unfair.
Yeah.
He faces harboring charges for the 2 Central American people he helped to smuggle into the country. The 2 men said that he provided them with food, water, beds, and clean clothing, and a building that is central to the operations of their organization and has been for many years.
Exactly.
The barn. Don't forget about that.
Yep.
And he also, in the article, it mentions that he no longer faces the conspiracy charge to transport the 2 migrants
Yeah.
with Edie Nail. They don't mention Edie Nail's name in the article at all, which I think is weird
Yeah.
because he did before Stellar, the writer. But for whatever reason, he says he's not facing this other charge, which was the most important charge, and you also failed to mention that. But also it doesn't mention Edie Nail Mujica and all of the shenanigans now happening at the southern border with the Africans and the Haitians that are protesting, that are throwing their own version of the pity party, and Edie Nail Mujica, and Matamoros, and what I just showed you with the tent city in Matamoros. And what's going on with this trial, prosecutors are acknowledging that the mention of Donald Trump or his policies would likely reflect badly on their cases against immigrant rights advocates. This is what a quote. I don't think that the fact that the prosecutors are demanding that he not yell Trump, 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 Trump throughout his trial is an indication of acknowledgement of anything. But the person quoted as saying that about this request by the prosecution is none other than Columbia University professor Catherine Frank, a law professor. Do you remember her, Duke?
Sounds familiar.
It does sound familiar, doesn't it? Because it is familiar. Because I believe we even did a whole show including details about Miss Frank.
Okay.
She's also, in addition to being a law professor at Columbia University, the director of law projects at Columbia that filed an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief in the Warren case due to his religious liberty claims. So she is the lawyer that actually filed the amicus brief on behalf of the religious liberty claim that I was just talking about. The project commonly advises the courts on how to approach these types of claims. Warren and his case is part of a larger trend of prosecuting immigrants' rights activists under the Trump administration, according to this lawyer, Miss Frank. That's what she said. And she said that that trend should be discussed in his trial for juror, in Warren's trial, and it should be for the jurors to consider. It also says that Warren is just one of many volunteers that has been persecuted under the Trump administration by the federal government. So what is the pity party narrative here? They're under attack. All they were doing was giving water. And they're arguing that since this is a crime, what they're charging him with, a criminal law requires a higher standard of proof. So the motives that Warren had are relevant, and the motives that those motives could very well be to step in where the Trump administration has neglected their authority as caretakers of these migrants going through the desert. So since the government isn't doing their job because of the current policies of Trump, he should have the right to talk about that. The president is sitting down on the job. He's not putting places and shelters and crossing guards and buses. He's not providing all of the infrastructure for the smuggling operation that these guys need. Dang it.
Yep.
So that's why people like Warren have to step in. That's why Hugo Castro and Dulce Garcia, the undocumented lawyer from Border Angels, have to step in. That's why these folks do what they do. And I wanted to give you a little bit more background on Miss Frank. But before I do that, really quick, I want to remind you folks who she is. Remember that her and another gentleman who's on the board of the Justice Delegates, among the groups of people that have gone to Israel and been deported or detained or admonished or banned from Israel for their connections to the boycott, divest, and sanction movement.
Okay.
She is one of those people. Here's the breaking justice. Is it a tweet? A post.
Yeah.
From the Center for Constitutional Rights. It says, breaking news. Vince Warren and Catherine Frank were detained for 14 hours, interrogated at Ben Gurion International Airport, and then denied entry into Israel and deported.
Oh, yeah.
Israel fears people who might challenge its policies. They quote someone there. I'm assuming it's Frank. But we talked about this. Is this bringing back your memories
Oh, yeah. I
about
remember
it?
this. Chase Ironized is part of that group.
Oh, you're right. Justice Delegation. And also Bernie Liaison Terahauska of the Water Protector Legal Collective. This Justice Delegation includes Catherine Frankie. There she is. But you're right. Chase Ironized is in the house.
Right above there.
Right above the name. This is from one of their events in New York, which included Chase Ironized and Catherine Frank and the Women's March co-founder, whatever, Tamika Mallory.
Oh, yes.
And Linda Sauer.
Oh, yeah.
There's her name. So don't forget who all is involved.
Yeah, no kidding.
And don't forget, it has to do with BDSM because that's why they were denied entry. And they know that. It's considered a terrorist allied organization because members of these organizations that are in the boycott, divest, and sanction movement, like Linda Sarsour or her family members, have been linked to funding Hamas, a terrorist organization. I did an entire show about that. If you want to go and look on kpppfm.com and type in Linda Sarsour, you can find all the shows that I did showing her links to her family members and her siblings doing time in jail for doing just that, helping to fund Hamas. It's pretty direct.
Yep.
And I also showed how her husband is connected to supporting of, terrorist-linked organizations. So for the record, they know that. But again, The pity party requires that people like Kat Frank in this article on Scott Warren neither disclose who they are, what they're connected to, what they do, or how they're in it for themselves. Because you know that they are. Here's the next article here from the Center for Constitutional Rights that talks about how these two were denied entry and what they were denied entry for.
Yeah.
They know exactly what this is about. And it also fails to tell you in the Tucson Artists article by Tim. I hope he gets a chance to hear about my show. Somebody send it to Tim Sellers so he'll know. Sometimes you got to check a little bit further on the background of these folks. She is the Jewish Voices for Peace advisor.
Okay.
Oh, I skipped one. Let me go back to this article from the Electronic Intifada, titled Columbia Professor Catherine Frank joins the academic boycott of Israel and will not speak at the Equality Forum. For why? Because she is part of the BDSM boycott that I was telling you about. In that article, it talks all about that. But here on her bio information from Columbia University, professor of law department, on their website, it lists her as the Academic Advisory Council Steering Committee for Jewish Voices for Peace. Among many other titles she has there. And institutions. And this is only the screen capture for the top of the page where the listing of her connection to Jewish Voices for Peace can be found. But let's look at a little bit more information from her personal wiki, or from the wiki they made about her. That gives you a little bit more in-depth understanding of who she is. Because, again, I just personally don't think people took too much time to check into that. When they were writing this article or looking into her in the past. I don't know. Maybe they don't need to do that, perhaps. But we do it here at A Mexican Crossing Lines. Thanks for all your support. We want you to understand where the information you get is coming from and who it's coming from. You can see that Catherine Frank is a member of the anti-Israel group Jewish Voices for Peace. And she sits on the steering committee of its Academic Advisory Council, as I just showed you. Frank is a proponent of the BDSM movement and has endorsed the U.S. campaign for academic cultural boycott of Israel. She is quoted in an article referring to Andrew Cuomo's ban on boycotts exclusively directed to Israel as unconscionable. She also chairs the board of directors for CCR, Center for Constitutional Rights. Frank is the Schulzbach Professor of Law, Director of Centers for Gender and Sexuality Law at Columbia University. And it talks about how she promotes incitement. It says here that she was the primary author of the CCR report that defended Black Lives Matter platform statement accusing Israel of committing genocide against Palestinians. Also, in October of 2015, she tweeted, Palestinians' resistance to Israel policy isn't Islamic terrorism. It's anti-colonial resistance. In October of 15, she also, there was an upswing, of violence across Israel incited by Palestinian political and religious leaders. The wave of stabbings, known as the Knife Intifada, saw young Palestinians across Israel stabbing and attempting to stab scores of Israeli civilians. She also has spread misinformation. She retweeted from Palestine Legal, claiming University of California at Irvine dismissed allegations against Students for Justice in Palestine for disrupting a pro-Israeli film screening. However, UCI released a report that found that Students for Justice in Palestine did in fact disrupt the event, and they imposed disciplinary sanctions on that group. She also tweeted a photo of MSNBC TV broadcast of a misleading series of maps with the headline Palestinians' Loss of Land. 1946 to the present, and commented, a real first for a mainstream U.S. network, MSNBC, honestly to portray Palestinians' loss of land and sovereignty. The Map That Lies is a series of maps that presented lands once controlled by Britain, Egypt, and Jordan as autonomous Palestinian land, purportedly stolen by Israel. And there are more. There is a long list.
Yeah.
She's also accused of defending hate speech. If you go to the next one. She's accused of on the Mondoweiss, I don't know how to say it, Mondoweiss, Mondoweis website that spreads Israeli hating propaganda. They refer to Frank as a true leader. That can't be a good thing.
Yeah.
In her efforts to defend Stephen Salaita, the Said Chair of American Studies of the American University at Beirut. In 2014, the University of Illinois withdrew an offer of employment to this person, Salita, after becoming aware of his anti-Semitic tweets. And then it shows a list of the tweets by Salita, the person that Frank has defended. But that's not all. She's also part of Jewish Voices for Peace. Now, it was founded in Berkeley in 1996 as an activist group with an emphasis on Jewish tradition of peace, social justice, and human rights. Its organizing is currently led by Rebecca Vilkomenson, and its board members include Noam Chomsky, Judith Butler, and Naomi Klein, as well as Tony Kushner. Jewish Voices for Peace employ civil disobedience tactics, like disrupting pro-Israeli speakers at events, etc. You've seen some of the antics of Jewish Voices for Peace. But although several Jewish groups have been critical of Israeli policies, like J Street and Partners for Progressive Israel, making efforts to operate within the mainstream American Jewish community, Jewish Voices for Peace functions outside of that. The group is often criticized for serving as a tokenized Jewish voice for the pro-Palestinian camp and is widely regarded as the BDS movement's Jewish wing. So, the Anti-Defamation League has accused Jewish Voices for Peace of being, quote, the largest and most influential Jewish anti-Zionist group in the United States, and said that the group, quote, exploits Jewish culture and rituals to reassure its own supporters that opposition to Israel not only doesn't contradict, but is actually consistent with Jewish values.
Huh.
Jewish Voices for Peace consistently co-sponsors rallies to oppose Israeli military policy that are marked by signs and slogans comparing Israel to Nazi Germany,
Wow.
demonizing Jews, and voicing support for groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. According to the Anti-Defamation League, Jewish Voices for Peace, quote, uses its Jewish identity to shed the anti-Israel movement from allegations of anti-Semitism and to provide it with a greater degree of legitimacy and credibility. That is what JVP and Catherine Frank stand for. And then, of course, finally, there is BDS. Thank you, local girl. We will keep going. And I know this is a lot of hard work, but you know what? My audience is wicked smart. And I know that you can break this down. I know that you can tell people what's really going on in the background once you understand it, once you can see it. The boycott, divest, and sanction movement, most notably, they have achieved infiltration of university campuses through their lobbying. You've seen them with, the Linda Sarsour crowd. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you've seen this in the Squad. Their the socialist Americans,
Yeah.
they're all about the BDSM movement. So all of these things are reminders of who this woman quoted in this article about this particular trial coming up. A trial that for Scott Warren of No More Deaths that included Irineo Mujica, the smuggling organization accused of smuggling by many people, including human rights defenders like Padre Solalinde, and who are being investigated by the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, Interpol, you name it. But they want to make us believe they're the victims. Continue to scratch below the surface because it is a pity party and it's all propaganda. So don't let them part you from your money, and don't buy the propaganda. Start educating folks around you about who these people are and what their agenda is. It is for us to open our doors, to open our borders, to open our gates, to violate the laws in Mexico, for Americans to champion the violation of laws in Mexico with regard to the care of children, so that they can defy the people from government organizations trying to take kids to shelters to get medical care, blankets, and food, that are trying to get people on the border to stop blocking border entry points and go and get a job and get asylum and rent an apartment and be a member of the community that contributes. Oh, the horror.
Yeah.
Don't let them lie to you about this. The real frauds here, the real criminals here, are these activists that are organizing them and feel that they are so above the law that they can sit there and argue with Border Patrol, that they can take on all of these institutions and use their media allies to lie to you. Thank you for being here with us on our Super Chat tonight on a Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Good night.
Good night.
Buenas noches.